It's an old quarry notch on the west edge of the park. A box canyon 110 yards deep, walled in on 3 sides, closed since before I was born. The access is a concrete slab, low water crossing over Kessel Run, poured in the 60s for quarry trucks and never removed. You step over that slab and you're in the cut. At 6:18 that morning, our park rescue team was dispatched on a call from a phone that never placed it. The caller said Brian Wickline was down in Sattler's cut, past the ford on the left side of the wash. That's exactly where we found him, alive, cold, and unable to walk on a broken ankle. His wife reported him missing 5 hours later. By then, Wickline's phone, which had been dead since before dawn, was sealed in a hospital property bag, and the carrier had no record of it placing any call. I signed the run sheet. My name's on a patient contact for a call that, according to every record outside our building, nobody made. I've been part-time with Laurel Township Fire District in Hocking County for 9 years, and on the county's volunteer technical rescue team for 12. We're the ones the park calls for ropes, gorges, and closed areas. Anything a squad with a cot can't reach. Part-time in Ohio means about 30 hours a week, no overtime, and a benefit package that keeps me insured. The paycheck is most of what covers my mother's memory care place in Logan. That distinction is going to matter later. Hocking County is gorges. Blackhand sandstone, hemlock, recessed caves, 300 feet of vertical in places you can walk to from a paved lot. People come from Columbus in tennis shoes. Most of our technical calls are somebody who went off a trail they were told not to go off. Sattler's Cut isn't a trail. It's an old quarry notch on the west edge of the park. A box canyon 110 yards deep, walled in on 3 sides, closed since before I was born. The access is a concrete slab, low water crossing over Kessel Run, poured in the 60s for quarry trucks and never removed. You step over that slab and you're in the cut. There's a gate on the service road and a sign about unstable rock. And the chain's been cut so many times, it's mostly links from 4 different chains. That morning, I was on shift, standing in the bay with a cup of coffee I never finished. Dispatch gave us an unresponsive party, possible fall, caller advising an injured male. Arlene Boyce was working the console. I've known Arlene's voice longer than I've known most people's faces. She's the night supervisor at the county center 30 years in, and she has one of those flat Appalachian, Ohio deliveries that makes everything sound like a weather report. What she said next stuck with me, but only later. Laurel Rescue. Be advised the caller disconnected. We have no callback. That's normal. Half our 911 calls in that park are people who lose signal mid-sentence. What wasn't normal was that Arlene didn't do the thing she always does, which is try the number on the air and tell us it's ringing out. She just gave us the coordinates and got quiet. We rolled 4. Me, Nate Yarber on the ropes with me, a driver, and Dell Rademacher met us at the gate in his own truck. Dell's the county rescue chief and the park's emergency coordinator. 2 titles and 1 man. He's 61, built like a fence post, and he trained me. He was there before we were, which is not how it usually works. He'd already cut the chain. We didn't need much rope. Wickline had gone in through the ford in the dark because a guy on a forum told him the quarry walls were good bouldering. And he'd stepped wrong on wet talus about 80 yards in. Exactly where the voice said. Left side of the wash, under the overhang. The caller gave both. We packaged him. He was hypothermic but talking, and talkers are easy. Nate ran the head, I ran the foot, and we started the carry back down toward the slab. It's not a hard carry. Bad footing, wet rock, but flat and short. Nate kept him awake asking about his kids, and Wickline answered in that loose, sleepy way people get when they've been on cold ground a couple hours. Then Wickline said, "It's colder down here than it looks." I didn't react. A man on a backboard in 40-degree shade says something about being cold. That's not information. We were maybe 30 feet short of the slab when Dell keyed up from the top of the bank. "Don't set him down till you're past the slab." Nate looked at me over the litter. There'd been no reason to set him down. We hadn't slowed. The ground was fine. "Copy," I said. We crossed. Dell watched us do it, and he didn't turn toward his truck until the last of the litter was over the far side. He looked like a man watching a plane land. We had Wickline in the medic unit by a little after 8 and at the hospital before 9. Around 1:15, I was in the ER hallway finishing my chart when a sheriff's deputy came through looking for the charge nurse. He had that specific tightness deputies get when the paperwork's already wrong. A woman had called the sheriff's office at 11:20 to report her husband hadn't come home from a hike. She'd woken up alone, waited, called his phone 8 times, called his brother, then called the county. The deputy took the report and started a missing person entry. Then somebody in the office matched the name to a hospital notification. He wanted to know who called us. I said the caller was the patient. He said the patient's phone was in the property bag at the nurse's station, dead, and that the wife said it had been going straight to voicemail since before 6. Then somebody with him called, he said. He was alone. The deputy looked at me the way you look at a guy you assume didn't write something down. "Somebody called," he said again, and went to find the nurse. That's the moment it stopped being a good outcome and started being a problem. Let me lay out what I actually thought, because I didn't jump anywhere. 95% of impossible things are a data entry error, and the other 5% are 2 data entry errors. First, another hiker found him, called, and left. Happens. People don't want to be involved, but you don't call 911 in somebody else's voice, and the wife heard the recording that afternoon and identified it in about 2 seconds. Second, Wickline called, blacked out, and forgot. Head injuries scrambled the hour before, except his phone was dead and had been dead, and there's no service in that cut. Not weak. None. The park has a coverage map because we've fought about radio dead zones for years, and Sattler's is the worst hole in the county. We can't even hit the repeater from down there without a relay on the rim. Third, somebody spoofed the number. That's a real thing. But a spoofer doesn't know a stranger's location down to the left side of the wash, and a spoofer doesn't sound like the man. Fourth, Arlene's console did something weird. Old software, bad location data, wrong record attached to the audio. That one I believed for about 6 hours, because dispatch systems are held together with tape and habit. That's the one I went to check. Not because I thought anything was haunted. Because if the record was wrong, my run sheet was wrong. And my run sheet had my name on it. That mattered more to me than it would to a normal person. A few years back, our district settled a wrongful death suit, a delayed response. A kid who didn't make it. I wasn't on it. But the settlement came with an auditor. And since then, everything we write gets read by a woman in Columbus who does not care about our feelings. We've had 2 people separated over documentation. Not patient care, documentation. So a patient contact tied to a 911 call no carrier can find isn't a curiosity to me. It's a line item that ends with somebody asking why Quarry wrote a narrative describing a call that doesn't exist. I texted Arlene that night. "You on tonight? Need to hear the audio on the Wickline call." She wrote back, "Come at 2, nobody here but me." The county center sits behind the courthouse annex, half underground, and at 2 in the morning it's 4 consoles and one of them lit. Arlene buzzed me through. She's 58, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a cardigan over the uniform polo because they keep it cold for the equipment. She didn't make small talk. She had the call cued. "Sit," she said, and pointed at the rolling chair beside her. She played it. A man's voice, mid-range, unhurried, not distressed. That's the first thing that's wrong with it, and you don't catch it until the second listen, because people calling 911 are almost never calm, and the ones who are calm have usually done it before. Brian Wickline's in Sattler's Cut. Off the ford about 80 yards, left side of the wash under the overhang. He's got a broken ankle, and he's been down a while. Then Arlene's voice asking his name. A pause. 2, 3 seconds. It's colder down here than it looks. Then nothing. Not a hang-up click. Just the line going open and empty until the system dropped it. I sat with my hands on my knees. "Play it again." She played it again. The second time, the thing that had been sitting in my chest all day finally came up for air. "Third person," he said Brian Wickline's in Sattler's Cut, like a bystander. And then the sentence. "He said that to us," I told her. "On the carry, word for word." Arlene didn't look at me. She took her glasses off, folded them, set them on the console pad, and still didn't look at me. "Arlene, the carrier's going to come back and tell you that handset didn't originate a call." She said it the way you'd tell somebody the road's closed at Route 33. "It'll take about a week. Then somebody from your district will ask me to correct the record, and I'll tell them I can't correct what came in." "How do you know what the carrier's going to say?" She turned the chair, and she looked older under that light than she does on the radio. "Because I've asked them before," she said. "Wes, I get off at 7. Come by the house. Don't come to me here about this again." Arlene lives in a brick ranch off Front Street with a carport and a dogwood she keeps meaning to take down. I got there a little after 7, still in uniform pants, running on 2 hours of sleep. She poured me a cup from a percolator older than her mortgage and set a composition book on the kitchen table between us. Black marbled cover, corners furred soft the way they get when a thing's been opened a few thousand times. "You're going to want to argue with this," she said. "Don't, just read." There were 4 books. The one on the table was current. The others were in a shoebox on the chair beside her. And the oldest had a cover faded to gray. Her handwriting is small and even, the way people write when they've spent a career filling in fields with a fixed width. Each entry was 4 lines, a date, a name, a time the call came in, and a short note in a column she'd ruled herself with a pen and a butter knife. If impossible case files are your kind of story, subscribe. Now look at what Arlene wrote beneath the first call. The first entry was 1971. A quarry worker. A call reporting a man down in the cut, placed from the quarry office line. There was a phone in that office, Arlene said. Wall unit. Service was cut in the 70s when the company folded, and the building came down years after that. She turned a page without looking at it. We got 11 calls off that line after the service was cut. My predecessor wrote them up as line faults, because that's what they were, as far as anybody could prove. I read down the pages. It's not a long list for 50-odd years, not even one a year. Some years had nothing. Then the entries started saying cell, and then carriers, and then the same tower sector on the ridge above the park, over and over. Every one of these is a call from inside the cut, she said. Some of them are people who got hurt in there and called. Some of them are. She gave me the point because it cost her nothing. 12 of them are. You can tell because those calls sound like a hurt person. They breathe wrong. They cuss. They ask you to stay on the line. And the rest? The rest sound like Wickline. Calm, third person. Gives the location better than a hurt person can. And then they say something at the end that doesn't belong to the call. There was a column at the far right where she'd written one word for most entries, almost always the same. Out. Sometimes it was blank. What's the last column? Whether they came out. I counted the blanks. It took a while because I kept losing my place and starting over, the way you do when you don't want the number to be right. 26, Arlene said, before I got there. Since 1971, 26 calls where nobody came out. Bodies? There's never been a body out of that cut. Not one. Wes, you've stood in it. Where would a body go? That's the part that got under the skin. Not ghosts. Geometry. What do the reports say? Whatever the sheriff's office decided. Left the area. Walked out the north rim. Voluntary missing. She put her glasses back on. 2 of them are still open files. I got to a page near the back of the current book and stopped. 2 years old. A call at 9:47 on an October night. A name I knew. Tasha Emmert, 19 years old. The last column was blank. I set the book flat and pressed my hands on the table, and Arlene got up and refilled a cup that wasn't empty, because she's decent, and that's what decent people do when they've handed you something. I'll tell that part properly. It needs its own telling. What I said out loud was, "You've had this 30 years. 29. And you never told anybody." I told 2 people. She sat back down. One retired to Florida and won't take my calls. The other one cut a chain for you yesterday morning, before your tones dropped. I found Dell in the bay the next afternoon, checking equipment that had already been checked. He had the litter up on sawhorses and was going over the strap keepers with a rag. You were at the gate before we were. I live closer. You had bolt cutters, Dell. You'd already cut the chain. He kept working the rag along the webbing. Chains cut every other week by kids. Don't set him down till you're past the slab. That got him, not much. His hand slowed about a second, then went back to it. That's carry discipline. You set a litter down on wet talus, you roll a patient. It was flat. We were 30 feet out. Then I set it 30 feet early. The compressor cycled. The flag chain hit the pole out front. Both went on a long time. Arlene showed me her books, I said. Dell folded the rag and set it on the litter rail. When he looked up, he had an expression I've only seen on him a couple of times, a man deciding how much of a thing he's going to hand you. How do you run a Sattler's call? He asked. Assist EMS, injured party. That's right. That's how I've run every one of them for 22 years. Not a search, not a missing person. An injured party we already know the location of. He picked the rag back up. You know what an incident type is worth? It's a code in a box. It's a code in a box, he agreed. And the box decides which system your name goes into and what that system calls you. Say the rest of it. He set the rag down again and looked at the bay door instead of me. It isn't the name, he said. His name can be in an EMS report, a hospital chart, or a dispatch note. That's nothing. That's paper. It happens when law enforcement officially classifies him as missing while he's still inside the cut. He let that sit. Once the county says he's missing, the cut makes it true. And if he's out? If he's across that slab first, he's out. It doesn't matter what anybody enters 10 minutes later or 10 hours later. It's the slab and the classification. The order decides it. Cross the slab first, and you're safe. Get classified first, and you never cross it. Neither of us said anything for a while. There's a policy draft going around the county, Dell said. Standardized entry timelines. Somebody in a meeting decided we've got too much local discretion about when a person gets classified. He looked at the litter. It'll pass. Every argument for it is a good argument. Dell. Go home, Wes. Nate caught me in the lot before I got to my truck. 27, 3 years on, built like he still plays something on weekends. He had his phone out with a picture of the cut chain on it. He was there first, Nate said. Rademacher. I checked the times. He beat us there and he didn't have to go home for his gear. It was already in the bed. He keeps it in the bed. He kept bolt cutters in the bed. He put the phone away. There's a full-time slot posting next month, first one in 6 years. You know how many people are going to apply? 40. So I'm not going to be the guy who saw something at that gate and shrugged. He wasn't hostile. That's Nate. He's not a snake. He's young and clean, and he thinks a paper trail is the same as the truth. Wes, if he's letting somebody dump in that quarry, or the park's hiding a hazard and he's running interference, that's people's lives. That's what the audit is for. You think Dell's on the take. I think he's protecting something and won't say what. And I've never seen a good reason for that. He knocked twice on the roof of my truck. Tell me I'm wrong and I'll drop it. I didn't tell him he was wrong. 2 nights later, I parked at the service gate a little before 7 with a headlamp in my jacket pocket and my phone in my hand. I'd called Arlene that afternoon, told her what I was going to do, and asked her to watch her console at 7 and not put anything on the air. She was quiet long enough that I thought the call had dropped. You'll be by yourself, she said. 20 yards in, out in 10 minutes. You'll be in a place with no signal and alone at dusk, and no unit knows you're there. Yes. All right. 7 o'clock. The light was going orange along the top of the west wall when I stepped over the slab. Kessel Run was running a few inches over the concrete, cold enough through the boots to feel like a hand around the ankle. I walked 20 yards up the wash, stopped and looked at my phone. No bars, nothing. I stood there with my mouth shut. I did not say one word out loud. And I watched that screen for 4 solid minutes. And it did nothing at all. Then I felt stupid, which was a relief. And I walked out. About 40 feet up the service road, my phone caught the tower and buzzed 3 times in a row. Arlene didn't say hello. Are you out? I'm out. Nothing happened. You called us at 7:04. I put my hand on the tailgate. I've got 22 seconds of audio. It's you. Wes, I've listened to you on the radio for 9 years. It's you. You said Wes Corley's in Sattler's cut, 20 yards off the ford, left of the wash. I didn't. I know you didn't. Her voice stayed flat, and that flatness was the only thing keeping either of us upright. There's one more line. I need to ask you something first, and I need a straight answer. Ask. Is anybody expecting you home tonight? I said no. There's nobody at my place, but a dog a neighbor lets out. Arlene took a breath and said, Then here's the last of it. She played it into the phone. My own voice, tinny through 2 speakers, calm as a man ordering a sandwich. Is anybody expecting him home? 20 yards, 4 minutes. I never opened my mouth. I sat in the truck a long time with the dome light off, looking at the gate and the headlights. Then I drove home, let the dog out myself, and sat on the back steps until 3 in the morning. Because there was a thing I'd been circling all week and hadn't let myself walk up to. 2 years ago in October, Tasha Emmert went into that cut. Corinne Emmert drives a school bus for Logan schools. Her daughter Tasha was 19, worked at the pizza place on Main, and had a boyfriend her mother didn't like who liked taking pictures where people aren't supposed to be. That October, they went out to the Quarry notch after dark and had an argument neither of them ever explained well, and he walked back to the car and drove off. He came back 40 minutes later, and she wasn't at the Ford. The call hit our center at 9:47 that night. Female voice, calm. Tasha Emmert's in Sattler's cut, past the Ford on the right side. Then a pause, and then, she's not going to like it when it gets dark. I wasn't on shift. I got the page as a team call-out, and I was at the gate in 19 minutes. We went in, 6 of us with lights, and we walked that cut 4 times. Slow, in a line, with a thermal camera Athens County loaned us. There's nothing in there. Talus, a wash, 3 walls, and a bench of rock about 30 feet up the south side, with no route to it that anybody's ever climbed. Around 11:30, Dell called it. Not a suspension, he called it a no patient found on an assist EMS run, and told the 2 deputies at the gate we'd resume at first light with more people. The boyfriend was standing right there. He said, "So is somebody going to report her missing or not?" Dell said, "Nobody's reporting anything tonight." I was 6 feet away, and here's what I felt. I felt like I was watching an old man protect his own paperwork. We were 11 months out from a settlement over a delayed response. And here was the man who trained me, telling a scared kid that a 19-year-old girl wasn't going into any system until the sun came up. I thought about Corinne Emmert getting a phone call at 4 in the morning that started with, "We didn't want to wake you." So I walked over to the deputy, a young guy who's since transferred out of the county, and I said, "You need to take that report tonight. Get her classified. If she's walked out and she's in a car with somebody, that's how you find her." He said, "The chief said." I said, "The chief runs rescue. He doesn't run your report." He called his sergeant. The sergeant agreed with me, because the sergeant was right. Tasha Emmert was officially classified as a missing person at 12:40 that night, and was in the state system before 2. We went back at first light with 30 people, a dog team, and a drone. We searched 3 days. There's never been a trace of her. The official finding is that she left the area on foot. The file is still open. There was a settlement offer from the Parks insurer that Corinne won't sign. And the last time it made the paper, it said the family remains critical of the initial response delay. I never told anybody I'm the one who pushed that deputy. Not because I was hiding it, because for 2 years, I thought it was the one thing I did right that night. I saw Corinne in the IGA parking lot on a Saturday, maybe 5 days after Arlene played me my own voice. She had a case of water in her cart and was fighting a tailgate that doesn't like cold. I got it for her. She recognized me, which I didn't expect, and she put her hand on my forearm and left it there. "You were there that night." "I was. I know what you did." Her chin came up. She's a small woman with a school bus driver's voice, the kind that carries to the back of 40 kids without shouting. That deputy told me, years later, at the Kroger of all places. He said the chief wanted to sit on it, and one of the rescue guys made him call his sergeant. The cold in that lot went through me a different way. "Mrs. Emmert, I've said thank you to a lot of people I didn't mean it to," she said. "Half of them were covering themselves. You're the only one who did the thing that should have been automatic." Her hand tightened. If they'd listened to that old man, she'd have been out there all night with nobody looking. I stood in a parking lot holding a woman's gratitude like a hot pan. "I'm sorry it didn't help." It helped, she said. It just didn't work. Dell was in his truck outside the same IGA. I don't think he followed me. Everybody in Logan goes there. He watched Corinne pull out, then leaned across and pushed the passenger door open. And I got in because I was going to have to sooner or later. He didn't start with Tasha. He started with a man named Rick Sowers. 50-something. Went in after a dog. Both hands on the wheel, engine off. Call came in at noon, same kind of call. We had eyes on him inside of 2 hours. He was fine, Wes. Twisted knee, sitting up, mad about the dog. We packaged him because it was a long way over Bad Rock and he couldn't wait it. I know the name. It's in Arlene's book. Then you know how it ends. Tell me anyway. Somebody returned a cart, and the wheels rattled the whole way across the lot. His daughter drove down from Columbus, Dell said. She'd been calling him all morning, got nothing, got scared, and stopped at the sheriff's office on her way in. She was doing exactly what a person should do. They took the report and classified him missing at 10 after 3. He turned his head. At 10 after 3, we were 40 yards short of the slab with him strapped in the litter. 40 yards. He sat up. He said it flatly, hands never leaving the wheel. Chest strap buckled, spider straps buckled, and he came up through them like a bedsheet. Never said a word to us. Got out of that litter and walked back up the wash on a knee that couldn't hold him 10 minutes before. Did you go after him? 4 hours. And the litter? We carried it out, straps still buckled. His boots were still in it. Both of them, sitting in the foot end like he'd stepped out of them. The heater ticked. It wasn't running. Metal just does that. 22 years I've run that place as an injured party, Dell said. Because the second law enforcement calls a person missing while he's still in there. No rope on God's earth is bringing him back over that slab. You never said this to anybody. I said it to a psychologist the county sent me to and spent 9 months on light duty. No self-pity, which was somehow worse. You want to tell that to a room? Tell it to that auditor from Columbus. Then tell me who runs the next one. There's a boy in the ground in this district because you sat on a call. He took that. Didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't explain. Which told me it was true and that he'd already spent everything he had on it privately. Yes, he said. That one wasn't Sattler's. That was a real delay, and it was mine. And it happened because after Sowers, I stopped trusting speed for anything. He finally looked at me. That's what it costs to hold one door shut for 22 years. You start holding other doors shut for no reason. I sat with my hands on my knees. Tasha Emmert, I said. The deputy made that call. I made him make that call. Dell didn't say anything. He looked out the windshield, and after a while, he started the truck, which was him letting me out. I told Nate everything 3 days later, because he'd started using the phrase records request in sentences, and I could see where he was going. We were at Cross Ledge Overlook, a fenced viewpoint on the public side of the park, about 1/3 of a mile from the cut as the crow flies. From there, you look down and across into the notch at an angle. He'd brought a camera with a long lens, still working the theory that somebody had been dumping in there. I gave it to him in order. The book, the 26, the boots, my own voice on a county recording asking whether anybody was expecting me home. He listened the whole way through without interrupting, which I hadn't expected. And at the end he said, "Okay, so we publish it." That's what I brought you up here to talk you out of. Wes, 26 people. Say we do it. I put my back to the fence. Say the paper runs it. Say it goes on the news in Columbus. What happens the next morning? Somebody actually looks. 26 families called the sheriff, I said. Every one of them demanding their case be reopened, and every one of them right to. And in a week, you've got 26 people freshly classified in the state system and 100 volunteers walking that wash with grid tape. He got it. I watched it land on his face, and I watched him hate it. You're saying the only thing keeping the door open is that nobody's written it down. I'm saying the door's already shut for those 26. What a fresh classification does to somebody who's already... I stopped, because I didn't have a word. I don't know. Neither does Dell. Neither does anybody. The sun was down near the west rim by then. That's the thing about a notch like that. It sits in shadow all day. And then for about 20 minutes in the evening, the light comes in sideways through the mouth and lays across the south wall. And everything in there goes the color of a penny. Nate had the camera up. He'd stopped moving. Wes. What? Come look at this. I took the camera. Good lens. The bench on the south wall came up close enough that I could see moss on the underside of the overhang and the water stain running down from it. There were people standing on it. Not crouched, not sheltering. Standing spread along that shelf, facing out toward the mouth of the cut. I counted 11 before my eyes started making things up, and I stopped trusting the count. They were dressed for different weather. A man in a canvas work coat with his hands at his sides. A woman in shorts. Somebody small near the left end. Third from the right was a girl in a green quilted coat with fake fur on the hood. I'd seen that coat on a flyer taped inside the door of every gas station in this county for a year and a half. I gave Nate his camera back because my hands weren't good. He looked a long time. The light was already going. The color came off that wall like somebody sliding a dimmer down. And by the time he lowered the camera, the bench was just a black line in a black wall, 110 yards from a gate you can drive to. He said, "How long can a person stand up like that?" Nate emailed the photographs to himself, to me, and to a cloud account before we got back to the parking area. I didn't stop him. He'd have done it anyway, and I wanted them to exist somewhere that wasn't just the two of us. The pictures weren't good. Long lens, low light, handheld. Blown up, the figures came apart into gray and darker gray. You could see there were shapes. You could not prove they were people to anybody who'd already decided they weren't. I said that in the lot, and he said, "Then we get a better one." And I understood the conversation about publishing wasn't over. It had just been postponed. The next week, I tried the only thing that didn't require anybody to believe me. If nobody can get into the cut, nobody makes the call. The gate's a joke. But the state owns that ground, and the state can fence a hazard. I drove down to the district office in Athens and sat across from the district park manager. Nice enough guy. Buzz-cut, laminated map behind him. I told him the cut was drawing people, that we'd had multiple technical rescues out of it, and that the gate wasn't holding. He agreed with all of it and pulled up the site file while I sat there. "You want a hard closure," he said. "Chain link, anchored, real signage." "Yes." "So do I. That's 25,000 with the anchoring. And it comes out of a capital line that's already spoken for." He turned the monitor a few degrees toward me. "The way it gets bumped is a documented hazard, engineering report on the rock face, or an incident history. You've got an incident history. We've had rescues out of there since the 70s. "I've got rescues," he said. "I need casualties, or a geotech report saying that wall's coming down." He scrolled. "What's in this file is a lot of assist EMS runs where everybody went home." "Wes, I'm not being a jerk. Get me one documented fatality or a serious injury with a hazard cause, and I can move this in a month. Right now, I'm competing against a bridge at Old Man's Cave with a crack you can put your hand in. I drove back up 33 doing that arithmetic, and I've never been able to put it down since. The only thing that gets a fence built is a documented death in that cut. The only way a death gets documented in that cut is if somebody gets classified as missing while they're standing in it. The fence that would stop it can only be paid for by the thing it's meant to stop. The county policy came through on a Thursday, 2 pages of clean, defensible language. No waiting period. Any report of a person whose whereabouts are unknown gets classified immediately and entered in the state system within 4 hours, with no discretion at the agency level. Dispatch shall not hold, reclassify, or delay. Effective the 1st of the following month. It's the right policy. Somebody in a conference room in Logan did a good job. Arlene called me the night it dropped. 22 days, she said. You could get out ahead of it. Retire. I'm 2 years short of 30. She laughed once, nothing in it. I'm 58, Wes. If I go now, I take a reduced benefit for the rest of my life, and I lose the medical. Then follow the policy. A silence with a lot in it. There's another thing. The audit hit the center. They're sampling call handling going back 3 years, and I'm one of 4 supervisors flagged for irregularities. It's a spreadsheet thing. My rate of incident type changes is higher than the other 3. Because you've been changing them. 11 times in 3 years. Every one of them Sattlers. What happens? Depends who reads it. She sounded tired, in a way I'd never heard from her. And I've talked to that woman at 4 in the morning through some bad nights. If it's HR, it's a write-up. If it's the prosecutor's office deciding I falsified a public record, it's a different conversation. Nate went quiet after that, which should have been the loudest thing in the world and wasn't because I was busy. My mother's facility raised their rate that same month, 11%. The letter had a paragraph about staffing costs, and it was probably true. And it meant the difference between my part-time hours and no part-time hours was now the difference between her staying in the place where she knows the hallway and moving her somewhere she doesn't. That's why I didn't drive out to Nate's house when he stopped answering texts. I picked up 2 extra shifts. He'd told me twice he was going to get a better picture. He'd asked me once, in the bay, what time of day the light came in on that south wall. And I told him the last 20 minutes before the sun clears the west rim, right around 4:45 in late October. I gave him the time. I want that in the record. It was a Tuesday. I was off, standing in my kitchen with a bag of dog food, when Arlene called at 4:43 in the afternoon. She didn't say hello. Wes, I've got a call from a phone in Sattler's cut. Who? It's Nate. I put the bag down. Say the whole thing. Call came in at 4:41. His number, his voice. Behind her, a second console was going, and somebody was talking on a phone line. He says Nate Yarber's in Sattler's cut, past the fort on the right, and he can't get back over the water. That's not how they say it. I was already moving for the door with my keys. They give a location and an injury. They don't say, can't get back. I know. I've never heard one say that. What's the last line? She hesitated, and Arlene doesn't hesitate. He said, tell Corley the light's better than he said it was. I was at the service gate a little after 5. Nate's truck sat on the road above it, driver's door unlocked, chain hanging cut in 2 pieces on the post. His phone was on the dash. Face up, screen dark, plugged into the charger cable. I picked it up. That's the part I still test myself on when I can't sleep. The phone was in my hand, in my headlights, and it had been sitting in a cold cab, plugged into a dead ignition, since before 4:41. And it had placed a call to Hocking County 911 that his carrier would later have no record of. The camera bag was gone. So was his headlamp, judging by the empty door pocket. I called Arlene from the service road at about 10 after 5. His phone's in my hand. It's been in his truck the whole time. Then he's in there. Yeah. Wes. Her voice dropped into that flat register. Here's what's already happening on my end. That call generated an incident. It's live as an assist EMS, injured party, which is what I typed and what I can defend. But his wife started calling him at 5 because he was supposed to pick up their dog from the vet at 4:30. She called our non-emergency line a few minutes ago asking if there'd been any accidents on 664. Here's the choice. I made it standing in the road with Nate's phone in my hand. And I'd make it again, and it cost more than anything else I've ever decided. The correct move is a full call-out. Tones drop, 12 to 18 people, mutual aid from Athens, a command post at the gate, park notified, sheriff notified. 25 minutes to get bodies moving, and probably 90 before we'd have hands on him. And every one of those notifications is a phone call to an agency with a keyboard. And the second a sheriff's deputy hears the words, "hasn't come out," somebody classifies a man as missing. So I called Dell instead. He picked up on the second ring, and I said 4 words. Nate's in the cut. He said, "Don't call anybody else." Then, 35 minutes. Then he hung up. I sat on my tailgate for 35 minutes, with a pack and a helmet I hadn't put on, watching the light go off the top of the west wall. That was the worst part of the whole night. Not what was down there. Sitting on a tailgate deliberately not doing my job, while a man I trained with was 110 yards away. Dell came in at about 5:45 with a second pack and a warming kit. "Called in as what?" he said, pulling gear out of the bed. "Arlene's got it as assist EMS." His wife? Calling around? He nodded like a man checking a forecast he already knew. "Then we've got until she gets scared enough to drive to the sheriff's office instead of calling. It's 2 of us. It's 2 of us who won't make a phone call." He handed me a handline and a headlamp. "He'll be on the talus. We walk in, we get under him, and we walk him out. Nobody sets anything down." A few minutes after 6, headlights came up the service road and stopped behind my truck. Corinne Emmert got out of her Escape with a scanner in her hand. I'd forgotten she has one. Half this county does. She'd been listening to Hocking County Fire and EMS traffic every night for 2 years, the way other people watch the news, waiting for her daughter's name. "There's an incident number at Sattler's," she said. She was already crying, and her voice was completely level, which I've only seen in people who've been braced for something a long time. "It's been open over an hour, and there's no units on it. Who's in there?" "Mrs. Emmert." "Who was in there?" "A member of my team." She looked past me at the gate. At Dell, standing at the bank with a pack on. At the 2 of us, the whole response. She took out her phone. "You're doing it again," she said. "You're doing exactly what he did to my daughter, and you're standing there letting him." "Corinne, put the phone down." "I'm calling the sheriff." She was already scrolling. "I'm telling them there's a man missing in that quarry, and this time somebody's going to write it down." Dell had stopped at the top of the bank. He didn't move and he didn't say anything. And I understood in about half a second that he'd decided 22 years ago he would never say it out loud to a family. And he wasn't going to start now. so I did the only thing I had. It wasn't him, I said. That night, it wasn't Dell who wanted her classified. She stopped scrolling. It was me. I told that deputy to call his sergeant. I stood in this road, and I made them enter your daughter as missing at 20 minutes to 1 in the morning. And I've let you thank me for it in a grocery store parking lot. Her hand came down slowly. Why? She said. Because I thought he was protecting himself. My throat had gone to gravel. Because I didn't know that in that cut, the classification is the thing that finishes it. Not a name on a chart, not a call in a log. The county saying a person is missing while they're still inside. That's not. She shook her head once, hard. That's not a thing. No, ma'am, it isn't. I pointed down the bank at the dark. But there's a young man in there right now. And I need an hour where nobody says the word missing. And I'm asking you for it. And I know exactly what I'm asking. Corinne stood in the road with her phone lit up in her hand and looked at me for what felt like a year. Then she said, "Is she in there?" I didn't answer fast enough. "Is my daughter in there?" "Yes." She turned her head toward the cut. The screen went dark by itself. "Then you'd better go get that boy," she said, "and on the way back you can tell me every single thing you've been carrying." We crossed the slab at 6:17. The water came over the tops of my boots, cold enough to feel like a grip on the ankle. And then we were in, and the sound of the creek dropped away behind us, the way it always does. 20 yards in, you can't hear it at all. The cut is quiet in a way that isn't natural for a place with water in it. We found Nate about 8 minutes later, and that was the first bad sign because it meant he hadn't tried to shelter or climb or hide. He was sitting on a slab of broken rock in the middle of the wash with his knees up and his hands loose between them. His coat was off and folded next to him. "Nate." He looked up and smiled like we'd run into each other in the bay. "Hey, you were right about the light." His words came out slightly behind each other. That's cold, or that's something else, and I didn't have the luxury of caring which. "It came in about 4:30. It was better than you said." "Where's your camera?" He thought about it. I set it down. Dell got the coat on him. Nate let him, the way a tired kid lets you. Arms up, no help and no resistance. Good color, bad coordination, no shivering. Past a certain point, people stop shivering, and it does not mean they're warmer. "Can you walk?" "Sure." He didn't move. I got my light up the wash then, because I'd been avoiding it, and put the beam on the south wall. The bench was 30 feet up, and they were on it. And I don't have a way to make that sound like anything other than what it was. Standing, facing out. The light doesn't reflect off them the way it does off a jacket or a face. It just lands, and you see a person, and you understand you're seeing a person, and your body starts hunting for a reason to be somewhere else. There's no route to that bench. There never has been. And there was a woman about 15 feet from us, standing on the talus, in a green quilted coat with fake fur on the hood. She was closer than the others. Whether she'd always been down there, or whether she'd come down while we were walking in, I don't know, and I won't guess. She wasn't damaged. That's the part nobody wants to hear. And it's the part I'd tell Corinne first. 2 years in that place, and Tasha Emmert looked like a 19-year-old girl standing in a quarry at night, waiting for somebody to finish talking. I said her name. She turned her head toward me. Not fast, the way you'd look at a car going by. I put my hand out. 12 years of training, and my whole body just did the thing it does, which is reach for a patient. She stepped back. One step, deliberate, out of my reach. Then she stopped and stood there. That's all. She didn't run, and she didn't speak, and she didn't reach back. She made the distance she wanted and kept it. Behind me, Nate said, "She's been trying to tell me something for a while." "Nate, get up." "I don't think she can." He hadn't moved off the rock. "I don't think any of them can." I got in front of him with my hands on his shoulders. He was warm through the fleece, and his eyes tracked me fine, and there was nothing wrong with him I could treat. "Buddy, on your feet." "I'm okay here," he said, and he meant it, and that was worse than anything on that wall. I've talked people out of a lot of places. Off ledges, out of cars, out of water. The trick is never the argument. It's finding the one true thing they still care about and putting it in their hand. Your wife has been calling dispatch for more than an hour, looking for you. Nothing. Nate, right now, tonight, there's a woman standing at the gate with a scanner she's had on her kitchen counter for 2 years, waiting to hear her daughter's name. I got my face down in front of his. That's what's happening up there. They're deciding whether to call you missing. And the minute somebody does, you stay here. Something came back on behind his eyes. Not all of it. Enough. "Like sours," he said. "Like sours." He looked at his hands, then past me, at the woman in the green coat. Then he stood up. The walk out was 110 yards, and it took us close to half an hour. Wet sandstone, loose rock, dark. Nate could bear weight but couldn't hold a line, so Dell took one side and I took the other. And we moved him the way you move a man who will stop the second you stop telling him not to. Don't set him down till you're past the slab. That sentence ran the whole way in Dell's voice, and it is not carry discipline. It never was. It means the ground under your boots is the only thing that decides anything, and the moment a man's weight is off you, he can put it back down wherever he wants. I understood exactly what it had cost the man beside me to say it out loud, only in that one crooked way, once a year, for 22 years. Nate wanted to sit twice. He asked me halfway whether we could stop and wait for the light, and I told him the light was hours off, and that it was Tuesday. And he laughed at that for no reason I could see and kept walking. I never let go of his coat. I felt the water on my boots before I saw the concrete. I got a hand in his belt and one under his arm and put him across that slab with more force than he needed. And all three of us went down in the mud on the far bank. Nate lay on his back in the weeds and said, "Okay." Dell checked his watch and said the time out loud, a habit from a career of documenting things. 7:02. Corinne was standing at the top of the bank with her phone in her hand, and she'd had it in her hand the entire time. She made the call at 7:10. She's the one who did it, and she did it after, and I've never asked her exactly how she timed it, because it isn't mine to ask. She told the deputy that a man had gone into the closed quarry area and his wife was looking for him, and she gave them his name and his plate. The official missing person entry hit the county system at 7:13, 11 minutes after we got him across the slab. Here's the rest, and I'll keep it short, because most of it is paperwork, and paperwork is how this whole thing works. Nate spent 2 nights at the county hospital and a week in Columbus. He had moderate hypothermia and cold-related nerve damage in 3 fingers on his left hand. He'd been down there for more than 2 hours, much of it without a coat. And wet cold doesn't need long. He has limited grip and permanent cold sensitivity, which for a rope tech is the same as a career ending, so it ended. He works a console now at the county center on nights at a desk Arlene used to sit at. His wife's happier about the hours. He never published the photographs himself. He did something smarter. He handed the whole packet images, incident history, file numbers to the district park manager as a documented rockfall and entrapment hazard with a serious injury attached to it, which is exactly what the man had told me he needed. Nate never used a single word that would have gotten him laughed at. Sattler's cut got its fence that spring. 8-foot chain link across the ford and both approaches, anchored into rock, a real gate with a real lock, and signage that cost more than my truck. It'll hold. I've been down to look at it. I know what that fence means. Nobody's coming out of there now. Not Tasha, not Sowers, not the man in the canvas coat. Whatever the 26 were waiting for on that bench, the county has now made permanent. And we did it on purpose, and it was still the right call. And I think about it every day. Arlene resigned in February. 3 days before a termination hearing over 11 reclassified incidents. She took the reduced benefit. She works part-time at the county recorder's office now. And when I apologized, she told me to stop, that she'd made every one of those keystrokes with her own hand and had never once been confused about what she was doing. Dell retired the week the new policy took effect. There was a cake in the bay. He shook about 40 hands and drove home. I see him at the IGA. I gave a statement to the sheriff's office and to our district that was accurate in every particular and left out everything that mattered. I said I received information that a team member had entered a closed area, that I contacted the rescue chief, and that we performed a 2-person extraction without a full call-out. That's what ended me. 2-person technical rescue in a closed area. No incident command, no mutual aid, no notification, with a hypothermic patient. I've read the findings. They're correct. I did all of it. I was terminated in March. The state EMS board suspended my paramedic certificate for 12 months, and I let it lapse rather than fight it, because fighting it would have meant explaining why. My mother moved to a facility in Nelsonville in April. It's clean and the staff are kind, and she doesn't know the hallway. She doesn't know most things anymore, which the social worker keeps telling me is a mercy. And some days it is. I drive for a medical transport company out of Lancaster now. Wheelchair van, dialysis runs, no lights, no radio traffic worth listening to. It's fine, I'm good at it. Nobody in that van asks me to decide whether a person is injured or missing. Corinne and I go up to Cross Ledge on Sundays when the sky's clear. There's a fence at the overlook, a bench, and a metal sign about the quarry's history that doesn't mention any of this. From up there, you can see the whole notch, the new chain link at the ford catching the light, the south wall in shadow all day long. She bought a pair of binoculars at the pawn shop on Main for $60. She won't use a camera. She told me once she doesn't want a picture of her daughter like that, sitting in a drawer where somebody could find it after she's gone. The light comes in sideways for about 20 minutes before the sun clears the west rim. Less than that in winter. She's worked out the timing better than I ever did. She knows what week it starts getting shorter. We don't talk much while we wait. She hands me the binoculars when she's had enough. And I look, and I count, and the count doesn't change. And that's the only good news I have to offer anybody. Last Sunday, packing up, she said the light would be better around 4:30 next week. I told her I'd pick her up at 4.